This is J. Krishnamurti's 8th public talk in Saanen, 1961.
The way of meditation and how not the method, but if there is freedom, how the mind can go very deeply within itself. And I would like this morning, if I may, to consider several things. First, fear, then time and death. I think they are interrelated. And without understanding the one, we cannot possibly understand the other. Without understanding the whole process of fear, we shall not be able to comprehend what is time. And in the process of understanding what is time, we shall be able to go into this extraordinary question of death. Death must be a very strange fact, as life, with its abundance, with its richness, with its varieties, fullness. So must death be. Death which must bring a newness, a freshness, an innocency. But to comprehend that vast ground, the mind must obviously be free from fear. Each one of us has many problems, not only outward problems, but inward. The inward problems outweigh the outer problems. If we understand the inner and go into it profoundly, then the outward problems become fairly simple and clear. But the outward problem is not different from the inward problem. It's the same movement as the tide in the ocean that goes out and comes in. But if we merely follow the outward movement and remain there, we shall not be able to comprehend the inward movement of that tide. Nor shall we understand the inward movement of that tide if we merely escape, abandoning the comprehension of the outer. It is the same movement which we call the outer and the inner. It's the same tide. But most of us are trained to look to the outward tide, that movement goes outward. And there the problems increase more and more. And without understanding those problems, the inward movement, the inward look, is not possible. And unfortunately, we have problems both outer and inner, social, economic, political, religious, and all the rest of it. And also inward problems. What to do, how to behave. how to respond to the various challenges of life. And it seems that whatever we touch, outwardly or inwardly, creates more problems, more miseries, more confusion. I think that is fairly clear for most of us who are watching, observing, living, that whatever we touch, intellectually, with our hands, with our minds, with our heart, problems increase. There's greater misery, greater confusion. And I think all our problems can be understood when we understand fear. I am using that word understand not intellectually, not verbally, but that state of understanding comes into being when we perceive the fact, see the fact, not only visually, but inwardly. Seeing the fact implies a state when there is no justification or condemnation, mere observance, the seeing of a thing without interpretation. For all interpretation distorts. So, understanding is instantaneous when there is no justification, condemnation, or interpretation. It is that word, to understand. For most of us is difficult because we think it's a matter of time, it's a matter of comparison, matter of gathering more information, more knowledge. But understanding does not demand any of these. Understanding demands only one thing, which is direct perception, direct seeing without any interpretation and comparison. So, without understanding fear, our problems invariably increase. Now, what is fear? You may have one series of fears and another series. I may be afraid of the dark, afraid of public opinion, afraid of death, afraid of frustration, not making a success of my life, not being able to fulfill, having no capacity, feeling myself inferior. At every turn of the mind there is fear. At every gesture of thought breeds, consciously or unconsciously, the dreaded thing called fear. Now, what is fear? Now, when one puts that question to oneself, is it in relation to something, or is fear isolated by itself, unrelated? You understand what I mean? We are not indulging in psychoanalysis en masse. What we are trying to find out is if it is possible to rid the mind totally of fear. Not bit by bit, but totally, wholly, completely. And to find that out, we must also inquire into what is fear, how it comes into being. And to find that out, we must inquire into thought. Not only conscious thinking, but also the unconscious, the deep layers of one's own being. And to inquire into the unconscious, surely, is not a process of analysis. Because when you analyze, or when another analyzes, there is always the observer, the analyzer, who is analyzing. Therefore, there is a conflict, there is a division, there is a dissimilarity. I want to find out how fear comes into being. I don't know if one is aware of one's own fears and how you are aware of them. Are we aware merely as a word, or are we aware directly in contact with the thing that causes fear? Is the thing that causes fear fragmentary, or a total thing that has different expressions of fear? I may be afraid of death. You may be afraid of your neighbor and public opinion. I may be afraid of being dominated by my wife, husband. But the cause must be one, not several causes that produces several types of fear. And will the discovery of a cause of fear free the mind from fear? I know I'm afraid of public opinion, let's say. Knowing the cause of fear, will that rid the mind of fear? The cause, the discovery of the cause of fear is not the liberation of fear. Do please understand this a little bit. I haven't time to go a great deal into it, because we want to deal with this morning is such a large field which we must cover, and therefore we can't go into several details. When I know the cause, will that empty the mind of fear? Or some other element is needed to rid the mind of fear? Not the mere discovery of the innumerable causes that breed fear. So in inquiring into what is fear, one has also not only observed or aware of outward reactions, but also be aware of the unconscious. I'm using that word very easily, not philosophically or psychologically or analytically. The unconscious, that is the hidden motives, the hidden thoughts, the secret desires, compulsions, urges, demands. Now, how does one examine or observe the unconscious? It is fairly simple to observe the conscious through its reactions of like, dislike, of pain and pleasure. But how does one inquire into the unconscious without the help of another? Because if you have the help of another, the other may be prejudiced, limited. He interprets and therefore perverts. How is one to look into this enormous thing called the hidden mind without interpretation, to look, to absorb it, to comprehend it totally, not bit by bit? Because if you examine it fragmentarily, each fragment leaves its own mark, and with that mark you examine the next incident, which distorts, and therefore there is no clarity through analysis. I wonder if you are getting what I'm talking about. Perhaps some of you will get it, the others may not, but it doesn't matter. We see the cause, the discovering of the cause of fear does not free the mind from fear. And analysis does not help to bring freedom from fear. There must be a total understanding, a complete uncovering of the totality of the unconscious. How does one do it? You understand the problem? The unconscious is surely cannot be looked at through the conscious mind. The conscious mind cannot observe the unconscious. The conscious mind is a recent thing. Recent in the sense newly educated to adjust itself to the environment. It has been conditioned newly through education to acquire certain techniques in order to live, in order to achieve a livelihood. Learns techniques, cultivates memories, and superficially it is capable of living a superficial life in a society which is utterly rotten and stupid. A conscious mind can adjust itself, and its function is to adjust itself. When it is not capable of adjusting itself to environment, there is a neurosis, contradiction, and all the rest of it. But the educated, the recent mind cannot possibly inquire into the unconscious, which is old. Which is the residue of time, of the race, with all the experiences. It is a repository of infinite knowledge of things that have been. How is the conscious mind to look at it? Or if the conscious mind cannot look at it as it cannot, because it's so conditioned, it's so limited by recent knowledge, by recent incidents, experiences, lessons and ambitions and adjustments. Such a conscious mind, educated, cannot possibly look into the unconscious. I think that's fairly simple. Please, this is not a matter of agreement or disagreement, because then we are lost. If you say you are right or you're wrong, then it has no meaning. But if one sees the significance of this immediately, there is no agreement or disagreement, one is inquiring. Now, what is the capacity, what is necessary to look into the unconscious? To bring all the residue, to cleanse the unconscious totally, so that it's made new. So that the unconscious doesn't project contradictions or create contradiction, which breeds conflict. So how is one to proceed to inquire into the unconscious, knowing that the educated mind is not capable of looking at it, nor the analyst, because his thinking is fragmentary. Doesn't matter who it is. His perception is limited, is fragmentary, and his examination must be fragmentary and limited. And how is this extraordinary mind, which has such vast treasures, experiences, the racial influences, the climate, the tradition, the constant impressions, how is one to look at it? How is one to bring it all out? Now, do you bring it out fragmentarily, or is to be brought out totally? I don't know if you're understanding the problem. If you don't understand the problem, what I'm inquiring to has no meaning. If the unconscious is to be examined fragmentarily, then there is no end. The very fact that you examine fragmentarily and interpret it fragmentarily, it strengthens the layers of the hidden mind. Because the hidden mind is not going to be examined fragmentarily. It must be examined as a whole picture. So, there must be the comprehension that nothing of the whole of the mind is to be understood fragmentarily. I don't know if Surely, love is not fragmentary. Love is not to be broken up into this and into that, and to put into various categories of respectability. Love is something total, complete. And a mind that dissects love and says this is divine, this is profane, this is right, this is wrong, this must be, this must not be. Such a mind can never know what love is. So to feel, understand what love is, there must be no fragmentary approach to it. So if that is really clear, that the totality cannot be understood through fragmentation, then a change has taken place, has it not? I don't know if you're meeting my point. Now, the unconscious must be approached negatively, because you don't know what it is. We know what other people have said about it. We know occasionally through intimation, through hints, that what it is. We don't know all the twists and turns, the extraordinary quality of the unconscious, all the roots. Therefore, to understand something which we don't know, you must approach it negatively, with a mind that is not seeking an answer. I wonder if you're getting this. We talked the other day about positive thinking and negative thinking. I said negative thinking is the highest form of thinking. And all thinking, whether negative or positive, is limited. But the positive thinking is never free, but the negative thinking can be free. Therefore, a negative mind that looks at the unconscious, which it doesn't know, is in direct relationship with it. This is not something strange or a new cult, a new way of thinking, nothing of that kind. That's all immature and infantile. When one has brushed all this aside, when one wants to find out what is fear and to be totally rid of fear, not in fragments, but to be completely free of fear, then one must inquire into the depths of one's mind. And that inquiry is not a positive process. There is no instrument which the superficial mind can create or manufacture in order with which to dig. The superficial mind can be quiet. Quiet independently of all its techniques, its knowledge, its capacities, its gifts. Put it all aside, voluntarily, easily. And when it does that, it is in a negative state. To do that, one must understand thought. Is not thought the totality of thought, not just one thought, two thoughts, but the totality of thinking? Does it not breed fear? If there was no tomorrow or the next minute, would there be fear? The dying to thought is the ending of fear. And all consciousness is thought. We come then to the thing called time. What is time? Is there time? There is time by the watch. And we think there is time inwardly, psychologically. But is there time, apart from the chronological time? It is thought that creates time. Because thought is the product of time, of many yesterdays. I have been that, I am this, I shall be that. To go to the moon requires time. Many days, many months to put the rocket together. And to acquire the knowledge of how to put the rocket together requires time, which is still mechanical by the watch. To go to the moon demands time because there's a distance of many miles, which is still is within the field of hours, of days, months, which is still time. But apart from the time, is there time at all? Thought has created time. Thought, I must be clever. I must become much more intelligent. I must learn how to compete, how to become a successful man, how to become respectable, how to subjugate my ambitions, my angers, my brutalities. This constant process of thinking, which is the part of the mechanistic brain, does breed time. But is there time? You're following me? If thought ceases, would there be fear? I'm afraid of public opinion, let's say. What the people say, what they think about me, I might lose my job. And that thinking about it breeds fear. If there was no thought, I wouldn't care two pins what public opinion thought of me. And therefore no fear. So I begin to discover thought breeds fear. Thought the result of time. And thought, which is the result of many yesterdays with all the experiences through the present, modified, creates the future, which is thought. So, the whole content of consciousness is a process of thought. Therefore, it is bound within time. You're following all this? Huh? I'm doing it. Now, can the mind be free of time? Not the chronological time, that would be insane, mentally unbalanced. I am talking of time as achievement, as success, as being something tomorrow. Becoming, not becoming, fulfilling, frustration, getting over something and acquiring something else. Which means, can thought, which is the totality of consciousness, thought which is revealed and not revealed, can that thought be completely die, cease to be? When it does, you have understood the totality of consciousness. So, dying is dying to thought. Thought that has pleasure, thought that suffers, thought that knew virtue, thought that knew relationship, thought that had become and expressed itself in various ways, which are all within the field of time. Surely that is total death. That is mechanical, the organic death, the bodily dying. In there, that you can't, the doctors may invent some drug which will help to continue the mechanical or organic existence as the body, making it more and more healthy, perhaps live for 100 years or 150 or 200. God knows for what, but doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. But the dying, in which there is no fear, now, if the mind can die to everything it has known, which is the past, which is death, after all, that's what we are all afraid about, suddenly ceasing, in which there is no argumentation with death. You can't argue with death. It is the ending. And to cease, which is to die to thought, which means die to time. I don't know if you have ever experimented with this. To die to your pleasure, not to suffering. That's fairly easy. Everybody wants to die to suffering. But to die to pleasure, to the things that you have cherished, to the memories that give you stimulation, a feeling of well-being, a youthfulness of things that you have cherished of the past, to die to that, which is to die to all that which is in time. If you have gone into it, if you have done it, then you will see that death has quite a different meaning than death has decay. You know, we are in decay from moment to moment. Decay, corrupting, not dying. We are deteriorating, withering away. To die implies to have no continuity of thought. You might say that's very difficult to do. And if one has done it, what's the value of it? It is very difficult to do. Not difficult, it requires enormous energy to go into it. It requires a mind that is young, fresh, unafraid, therefore rid of time. What value has it? Perhaps not any utilitarian value. To die to thought, therefore to time, means to discover creation which is destructive and creating everything anew every second. In that there is no deterioration. There is no withering away. It is only thought that withers. And the thought that creates the center as the me and the not me. That knows decay, that knows withering. So to die to everything that the mind has accumulated, gathered, experienced, to cease on the instant, is creation, in which there is no continuity. That which has continuity is always in decay. I don't know if you have not noticed this perpetual longing for continuity, which most of us want. The continuity of a particular relationship between the husband, wife, son and father, and all the rest. A continuity of a relationship. When it is continued, it is decayed, it is dead, it is worthless. But when one dies to continuity, there is a newness, there is a freshness. So, one can directly, the mind can directly experience what is death, which is quite extraordinary. Because most of us don't know what is living. Therefore, we don't know what is living, what is dying. Do we know what living is? We know what struggling is. We know what envy is. And the brutality of existence, the vulgarity, all the rest of it, the hatreds, the ambitions, the corruptions, the conflicts, we know that. We say that is our life. And so we are afraid of death, because we don't know that. Perhaps if we knew what living was, then we should also know what dying is. Living, surely, is a timeless movement. In which the mind is no longer accumulating. Living. Moment you have accumulated, you are in a state of decay, whether the vast experience or little experience. Because around that you have security. So if one can know what living is, which is to dive to every minute to the things that one has acquired, not physical things, but the inward things, to inward pleasures, to inward pains, to die to it. Not in time, but to die to it as it arises. Then you will find, if you have gone as far as that death is as life. The living is not separate from the dying. And that has an extraordinary sense of beauty. And beauty, that beauty is beyond thought and feeling. It cannot be put together and used in painting, in writing a poem, or playing an instrument. Those are all irrelevant. There is a beauty that comes into being when life and death are the same, when living and dying are synonymous, because then life and death leaves the mind completely rich, total, whole. Sorry. Can we discuss or ask questions about what we have been talking this morning?
Perhaps also what you have not comprehended in relationship to another.
Oh, please.
It is also possible to die in death.
I wonder if you listen to my talk. I wonder if you listen to the speaker, or were you forming your question? You understand? You are so ready with your question, weren't you? Which means you're already forming your question, therefore not listening. If you are, I'm sorry, I hope I'm not being rude, I'm not. I'm just pointing it out. If one has listened to the talk of this 40 minutes or 50 minutes, your question would be answered. What were you going to say, sir?
The same situation of fear, some
You are suggesting, is that right, sir? Please correct me, because I can't quite hear what's being said. If man is rid of fear, would there be greater disorder?
No, it's through the exploration of fear. Isn't there a serious danger of mental disorder? And disorder.
Through the exploration of fear, isn't there serious danger of mental disorder?
The question is, through exploration of fear, will there not be increase of mental disorder? Danger of mental disorder. Could there be a greater danger to mental disorder than the mentality with which we live? Aren't we all, if you'll forgive me my pointing out, little bit disorderly? I'm not being rude. It's not my business to judge. It's not my intention or my thought to judge you. But this extraordinary concern that there might be greater danger of mental illness. Do you know what is making us ill? Not the inquiry into fear. Wars, Khrushchevs, communism, religious bigotry, ambition, competition, snobism. All the indications of a mentally ill person. But surely inquiring into fear and being ridding the mind of totally of fear surely is highest sanity. Which all indicates, does it not, sirs, that we think the present society is a marvelous thing. Probably those of us who have bank account and well-to-dos feel that. Don't disturb. Don't let me be disturbed. But life is a very disturbing thing, very destructive thing. And that's what we are afraid of. Not of living, not of being free from fear, but to find a corner where we are secure and comfortable and to be left alone to rot. No, sir, this is not rhetoric. This is our inward secret desire. We seek this in every relationship. How we hate when the wife turns away from the husband, or the husband goes after another. Jealousy, envy, and the approval of society, and the benediction of the church. Surely that brings us deterioration, destruction of a sanity.
Sir, you have said that these things are not new. I mean, they seem to be very good, but I think they are quite new to us because we haven't read them in any.
What's the point, sir? What's the question?
The question is that these are quite new things.
Yes, sir. Then what is the question?
And in this world,
Yes, sir. What is the question?
then we have to continue now with these new things.
No, sir. the gentleman says, we must continue with these new things that you have been talking about. You can't continue with them. If you continue with them, they are mere ideas. And ideas are not going to create anything new. So, I've been talking about total destruction of the things that the mind has built inwardly. You can't continue with destruction. If you continue with destruction, it is construction. Building up, which must be destroyed. We need a new mind, a fresh mind, a new heart, an innocent mind, a young, decisive mind. And to have such a mind, there must be destruction, there must be a creation which is new. Sorry, we must stop.